In a quiet little town surrounded by green hills and open fields, life moved at its own relaxed pace. The heart of the town was a cozy diner named Maggie's Dine-In, where locals gathered for hearty meals, friendly chatter, and steaming cups of coffee. It wasn't fancy, just a simple place with red vinyl booths, checkered floors, and the smell of pancakes wafting through the air. For most people in the town, it was more than just a diner. It was a second home. Emily Carter had been working there for nearly 6 years. She wasn't just any waitress. She was the waitress everyone loved. With her bright smile and kind eyes, she made every customer feel special. Whether it was remembering their favorite orders or cracking lighthearted jokes to brighten someone's day, Emily had a way of making people feel seen and cared for. But behind her cheerful demeanor was a young woman with dreams much bigger than serving burgers and fries. Every night after her shift ended, Emily would head back to her tiny apartment above the old library. Once inside, she'd close the door, kick off her shoes, and let out a deep sigh. Her real world began when the rest of the town went to sleep. That's when she'd pull out her worn guitar or sit by the window with sheet music scattered around her. Singing was her escape, a secret passion she nurtured, but never shared with anyone. Her voice carried emotions that words alone couldn't express. Sometimes she sang soft ballads about love and loss. Other times, she belted out powerful songs that echoed through the empty rooms. Music gave her strength on tough days and comfort when loneliness crept in. But despite how much joy singing brought her, Emily kept it hidden from the world. Growing up, she'd always been told practicality mattered more than dreams. Music won't pay the bills, her uncle used to say whenever she mentioned wanting to perform. So she tucked away her aspirations, convincing herself that being a waitress was enough. Still, deep down, a part of her longed to step onto a stage, to share her voice with an audience who might truly appreciate it. The diner became both her sanctuary and her cage. On busy days, she found solace in the rhythm of taking orders, refilling drinks, and clearing tables. Yet there were moments when she caught herself staring out the window, imagining what life could be like if she took a chance. What if someone discovered her talent? What if they liked what they heard? These thoughts lingered in her mind like whispers, too faint to act upon, but impossible to ignore. Little did Emily know, fate had something extraordinary planned for her. In a twist neither she nor anyone else saw coming, her quiet life as a waitress was about to change forever. All it would take was one unexpected evening, and one reluctant performance, to turn everything upside down. It was a typical Friday evening at Maggie's Dine-In, with the usual hum of chatter and clinking dishes filling the air. Emily moved gracefully between tables, balancing plates of food and cups of coffee like a pro. The diner was busier than usual, thanks to a group of tourists who had stopped by after driving through the countryside. Among them was a cluster of sharply dressed individuals who stood out immediately. Their designer clothes and polished shoes looked out of place in the humble diner, but they seemed amused by their surroundings, exchanging smirks and snide remarks as they settled into a booth near the window. The leader of the group was a tall, poised woman with an air of authority about her. Her perfectly styled hair and expensive jewelry screamed sophistication, or maybe arrogance, depending on how you looked at it. She glanced around the room with a raised eyebrow, clearly unimpressed by the checkered floors and mismatched chairs. Quaint, she remarked dryly to her companions, drawing a few chuckles from the group. They were members of an exclusive social club in the city, stopping for a quick bite before heading to a high-profile gala later that night. To them, this detour was nothing more than a novelty, a chance to poke fun at small-town life. As Emily approached their table to take their order, she couldn't help but notice the way they whispered among themselves, casting judgmental looks at the decor and even the other diners. She forced a polite smile, determined not to let their attitude bother her. After jotting down their orders, she turned to leave, but one of them called her back. It was the woman with the commanding presence, leaning forward slightly with a sly grin. "Tell me," she said, her voice dripping with mock curiosity, "do you folks ever have any entertainment around here. Emily froze for a moment, unsure how to respond. Before she could say anything, another member of the group chimed in, laughing. "Oh, come on, Victoria, don't be cruel. I'm sure they've got something to keep us entertained while we wait." His tone was teasing, but there was an edge to it that made Emily's stomach tighten. She felt the weight of their stares, as if they were daring her to prove them wrong. Her boss, overhearing the exchange, decided to step in. Always eager to please customers, no matter how difficult they were, he clapped his hands together and announced, "Well, why not? We can put on a little show right here." He gestured toward Emily, much to her horror. "Our Emily here has a lovely voice. Go ahead, give these fine folks a taste of your talent." The room went quiet, all eyes turning to Emily. Her heart raced as panic set in. Singing in front of strangers, especially ones like this, was the last thing she wanted to do. She shook her head quickly, trying to protest, but her boss wouldn't hear it. "Come on now," he urged, already setting up a makeshift microphone at the corner of the room. "Don't be shy. Show them what you've got." Reluctantly, Emily found herself walking toward the mic, her legs feeling like lead. Every instinct told her to run, to disappear into the kitchen, and avoid the humiliation that surely awaited her. But something deeper stopped her, a flicker of defiance, perhaps, or the memory of all those nights spent singing alone in her apartment. As she stood there, gripping the microphone stand, she realized there was no turning back. Whether she liked it or not, she was about to perform for the snobbiest audience she'd ever faced. The moment Emily stepped up to the makeshift microphone, the room felt heavier somehow. Every pair of eyes was fixed on her, some curious, others amused, and a few downright skeptical. She could feel the weight of their stares pressing down on her like an invisible force. Her hands trembled as they gripped the mic stand, knuckles turning white. The air seemed thick with anticipation, or maybe it was just her nerves making everything feel suffocating. Her mind raced with doubts. What if her voice cracked? What if she forgot the lyrics or stumbled over the notes? Worse still, what if they laughed at her? These people weren't here for her. They were here for themselves, looking for entertainment in the most condescending way possible. They didn't care about her dreams or how much singing meant to her. To them, this was nothing more than a cruel joke, a chance to poke fun at someone who wasn't part of their polished world. Emily glanced around the room, searching for something, anything, that might steady her racing heart. She caught sight of her boss standing near the counter, giving her an encouraging nod. A few regulars from the diner offered small smiles, though even they looked uneasy. And then there was them, the group that had started all of this. Their expressions ranged from bored indifference to barely concealed mockery. One man leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, while another tapped his fingers impatiently on the table. Victoria, the woman who had suggested the performance in the first place, raised an eyebrow, as if daring Emily to fail. For a brief second, Emily considered backing out. She could say she changed her mind, apologize profusely, and retreat to the safety of the kitchen. No one would blame her. It wasn't like she asked for this. But deep down, she knew running away wouldn't solve anything. This fear, this paralyzing anxiety, had kept her stuck for years. If she turned back now, she'd always wonder, what if I had tried? Taking a shaky breath, Emily closed her eyes and let the noise of the room fade into the background. She thought about all those nights spent alone in her tiny apartment, pouring her soul into songs no one else heard. Those moments weren't just practice. They were pieces of her, fragments of who she truly was beneath the apron and name tag. Singing wasn't just something she did. It was who she was. And maybe, just maybe, tonight was her chance to show that, not just to them, but to herself. Her grip tightened slightly on the mic stand as she reminded herself why she was doing this. It wasn't for applause or approval. It was because she owed it to herself to try. Slowly, she opened her eyes and scanned the audience one last time. Then, summoning every ounce of courage she had, she took a deep breath and began to sing. At first, her voice wavered, fragile, and uncertain. But as the melody unfolded, something shifted inside her. The fear didn't vanish completely, but it softened, replaced by a quiet determination. Each note carried a piece of her story, the struggles, the sacrifices, the hopes she'd tucked away for so long. For the first time in years, Emily stopped thinking about what others might think and simply let herself be. The moment Emily's voice filled the room, something extraordinary happened. The fragile, hesitant notes she began with quickly transformed into a rich, soulful melody that seemed to wrap itself around everyone present. It was as if the diner itself held its breath, the clinking of cutlery and low hum of conversation fading into silence. Her voice wasn't just heard, it was felt. Each word carried a depth of emotion that resonated in ways no one expected, least of all the skeptical crowd. At first, the group of well-dressed patrons sat stiffly in their seats, their expressions unreadable. Victoria, the woman who had mockingly suggested the performance, leaned back slightly, her arms crossed. But as Emily continued to sing, something shifted in her demeanor. Her raised eyebrows softened, and the corner of her mouth twitched, not in amusement, but in surprise. The man beside her, who had been tapping his fingers impatiently, stopped mid-motion, his hand frozen in the air. Even the diner regulars, who were already fond of Emily, found themselves leaning forward, captivated by the raw power of her voice. Emily sang a classic ballad, one she practiced countless times alone in her apartment. The lyrics spoke of longing and resilience, themes that mirrored her own life in ways the audience couldn't fully understand. Yet somehow, they did. Her voice conveyed not just the words of the song, but the weight of years spent dreaming in secret, the ache of holding back, and the quiet hope that refused to die. It was impossible not to be moved. As the song progressed, the atmosphere in the room changed completely. What had started as a forced performance born out of mockery turned into something magical. People exchanged glances, their earlier skepticism melting away. A young couple seated near the window clasped hands without realizing it, their eyes glistening. An older gentleman at the counter wiped a tear from his cheek, nodding slowly as if he understood exactly what Emily was trying to say. Even the cook in the kitchen paused mid-flip of a pancake, peeking through the serving window to listen. When Emily reached the final chorus, her voice soared with a confidence that startled even her. She wasn't thinking about the crowd anymore, or the judgment she had feared so deeply. Instead, she poured every ounce of herself into the music, letting it carry her away. By the time the last note hung in the air, the room was utterly still. For a beat, no one moved or spoke. Then, like a wave breaking on the shore, applause erupted. It started with a few scattered claps from the diner regulars, but within seconds, the entire room joined in. Strangers stood up, cheering loudly, some whistling in admiration. Plates were set down, forks abandoned mid-bite, as people gave Emily their full attention. The same group that had entered the diner sneering at its simplicity now looked at her with wide-eyed respect. Victoria, who had initially intended to ridicule the waitress, sat quietly for a moment before finally rising to her feet, joining the standing ovation. Emily stood there, stunned, her chest rising and falling with the effort of what she'd just done. Tears blurred her vision as she took in the scene before her. This wasn't just applause, it was validation. For the first time in her life, she felt truly seen, not as a nameless waitress in an apron, but as an artist with a gift worth sharing. And while the road ahead would undoubtedly bring challenges, this single moment proved one thing beyond doubt. Emily Carter was meant to sing. The applause didn't die down quickly. It swelled and lingered, filling the diner with a warmth that felt almost tangible. Emily stood frozen at the microphone, her heart pounding so loudly she could barely hear anything else. Her cheeks were wet with tears, but she didn't bother wiping them away. She couldn't believe what was happening. These people, strangers who had walked in with dismissive attitudes and mocking grins, were now on their feet, clapping as if they'd just witnessed something extraordinary. And maybe they had. Encouraged by the overwhelming response, Her boss, still beaming with pride, called out from behind the counter, "Come on, give us another one." The crowd erupted into cheers, shouting requests and urging her to keep going. Emily hesitated for a moment, glancing nervously at the group of well-dressed patrons. They weren't laughing anymore. Instead, they looked genuinely eager to hear more. Victoria, the woman who had started it all, nodded approvingly, her earlier smirk replaced by an expression of admiration. Taking a deep breath, Emily decided to take the plunge. If this was her moment, she wasn't going to let fear hold her back any longer. She picked another song, one that had always been close to her heart, and began to sing again. This time, her voice came out stronger, steadier, carrying a confidence she hadn't known she possessed. The audience responded instantly, swaying along to the rhythm and mouthing the lyrics when they recognized the tune. By the time she finished, the applause was even louder than before, with shouts of "one more" echoing through the room. She sang a third song, and then a fourth, each performance drawing deeper reactions from the crowd. People filmed her on their phones, capturing snippets of her voice to share with friends and family. Some even approached her between songs, shaking her hand and telling her how much her music moved them. It was surreal, like stepping into a dream where everything she'd ever hoped for was finally coming true. When the impromptu concert finally ended, Emily stepped away from the mic, her legs trembling not from fear, but from sheer exhaustion. The crowd slowly settled back into their seats, buzzing with excitement. Victoria walked over to her, extending a polished hand. "That was remarkable," she said, her tone sincere. "You have real talent." Emily managed a shaky smile, unsure of what to say. Victoria handed her a business card, explaining that she worked in event management and would love to discuss opportunities for Emily to perform professionally. "Call me," she insisted, before rejoining her group. Others followed suit, offering compliments and advice, some even suggesting venues where she could showcase her gift. As the night wound down and the diner emptied, Emily found herself sitting alone at a booth, staring at the small pile of business cards in her hand. Her mind raced with possibilities. Could this really be happening? Was this the start of something bigger? For so long, she had kept her dreams locked away, convinced they were too impractical or unreachable. But now, surrounded by evidence of her own potential, she realized she had been wrong to doubt herself. Her coworkers gathered around her, hugging her tightly and congratulating her on the incredible night. One of them joked, "Guess we'll have to find a new waitress now." Everyone laughed, but there was no bitterness in their words, only pride. They knew Emily deserved this chance, and they were happy to see her get it. For the first time in years, Emily went home feeling not just hopeful, but unstoppable. That night, as she lay in bed replaying the evening in her mind, she made a silent promise to herself. She wouldn't let this moment slip away. Whatever came next, she was ready to face it head-on. The days that followed the unforgettable night at Maggie's Dine-In felt like a whirlwind. Word of Emily's breathtaking performance spread faster than she could have imagined. A few patrons had recorded videos of her singing and uploaded them online, adding captions like "hidden gem discovered in small-town dinner" and "waitress stuns crowd with jaw-dropping voice." Within hours, the clips went viral, racking up thousands of views, likes, and comments. People from all over the country were talking about the shy waitress who silenced a snobby crowd with her powerhouse vocals. Local news stations caught wind of the story and reached out for interviews. At first, Emily hesitated. She wasn't used to being in the spotlight, but her coworkers encouraged her to embrace it. "This is your moment," one of them said firmly. "Don't let fear stop you again." So, with trembling hands and a racing heart, Emily agreed to sit down with reporters. She spoke candidly about her life as a waitress, her secret passion for singing, and how that fateful evening changed everything. Her authenticity resonated with viewers, making her story even more endearing. Victoria, the woman from the diner, kept her word. She called Emily the next day, arranging a meeting to discuss potential opportunities. Over coffee, Victoria explained that she worked with high-profile clients and organized exclusive events. She believed Emily had what it took to shine on bigger stages and offered to help her get started. It was overwhelming but exciting. For the first time, Emily allowed herself to dream beyond the confines of her small-town life. Auditions came next. With Victoria's guidance, Emily prepared tirelessly, practicing old songs and learning new ones. She poured every ounce of determination into honing her craft, determined not to waste this chance. The audition process was grueling. There were moments when rejection stung deeply, but Emily refused to give up. Finally, after weeks of callbacks and negotiations, she signed a contract with a prestigious music producer. It was official. Emily Carter was stepping into the world of professional singing. Leaving Maggie's Dine-In wasn't easy. The place had been her second home for years, and her coworkers had become family. On her last day, the entire staff threw her a farewell party, complete with balloons, cake, and heartfelt speeches. One by one, they shared stories of how much she meant to them, not just as a coworker, but as a friend. When it was Emily's turn to speak, she choked up, struggling to find the right words. "You've all been my support system," she said finally, tears streaming down her face. "I wouldn't be here without you." As she packed up her apron for the last time, Emily took a long look around the diner. Every corner held memories: the laughter, the late-night shifts, the quiet moments when she'd hummed softly while cleaning tables. This place had shaped her in ways she'd never forget. But as bittersweet as it was to leave, she knew it was time to move forward. Her first gig as a professional singer was at a local theater, just a short drive from the diner. Many of her former coworkers attended, cheering louder than anyone else in the audience. When Emily stepped onto the stage, dressed in a simple yet elegant gown, she felt a surge of gratitude. Looking out at the sea of familiar faces, she realized something important. No matter where life took her, she would always carry a piece of Maggie's, and the people who believed in her, with her. That night, as she sang her heart out under the spotlight, Emily knew she was exactly where she was meant to be. Years passed, and Emily's life transformed in ways she could never have imagined. What started as a single night of courage turned into a flourishing career that took her to stages across the country, and eventually around the world. She released albums, performed at sold-out concerts, and even won awards for her soulful voice. Yet despite all the glitz and glamour, Emily never forgot where it all began. The small-town diner wasn't just a chapter in her story, it was the foundation of everything she had become. One crisp autumn morning, Emily found herself driving down familiar roads, her heart swelling with nostalgia. She hadn't been back to her hometown in years, not because she didn't want to, but because her schedule rarely allowed it. This time, though, she made it a priority. Pulling up to Maggie's Dine-In, she smiled at the sight of the weathered sign and the red vinyl booths visible through the windows. It looked exactly the same: comfortable, cozy, timeless. As she walked inside, the bell above the door jingled softly, announcing her arrival. For a moment, there was silence. Then came gasps, followed by cheers. Her former coworkers rushed over, hugging her tightly and marveling at how much she'd grown. Some had tears in their eyes, while others teased her about being too fancy to step foot in the diner anymore. Emily laughed, assuring them she was still the same person who used to refill coffee cups and wipe down tables. She insisted on performing one last song there, not for fame or applause, but as a tribute to the place that had given her wings. When the owner set up a microphone in the corner of the room, Emily stepped up to it, feeling a lump rise in her throat. The audience this time wasn't a group of strangers or elite socialites. It was her people. These were the faces she'd served meals to, shared laughs with, and leaned on during tough times. As she began to sing, her voice carried the same raw emotion it always had, but now it resonated with gratitude. She sang about home, about roots, and about finding your way back when life takes you far. When the final note faded, the room erupted into applause. But more than that, there was a sense of unity, a shared understanding that dreams don't happen in isolation. They're nurtured by communities, supported by kindness, and fueled by moments of unexpected courage. Afterward, Emily stayed for hours, catching up with old friends and reminiscing about the past. Someone brought out an old photo album, and they laughed until their sides hurt, flipping through pictures of younger versions of themselves. Before leaving, Emily left a handwritten note taped to the wall behind the counter. To everyone at Melodies, thank you for believing in me before I believed in myself. You'll always be part of my journey. Driving away later that evening, Emily felt a deep sense of peace. Fame had changed many things, but it hadn't changed who she was at her core. She was still the girl who dreamed big while working long shifts, the woman who found strength in vulnerability, and the singer who proved that talent can shine anywhere, even in the unlikeliest of places. As the lights of the diner faded in her rearview mirror, Emily knew she'd carry its lessons with her forever. Humility, resilience, and the power of taking a chance when it matters most.